Thomas sat next to Sarah in a movie theater unlike any he had ever seen. Okay, he had never been to a movie theater, but had seen pictures of them, and this was very impressive. The size of a large field, the theater had deep red curtains surrounding a large white screen with ornately carved white marble cherubs of various sizes set high up on the wall beside it. The chunky little angels, frozen in positions of mid-flight, hung close to the ceiling looking down on the center of the theater. The floor was covered in thick red carpet and rows of blue velvet-covered seats occupied by people he didn't recognize. You'd have thought after all the people he had fought with that had died, he'd know at least a few of these dead people, but he didn't. He wasn't even sure if these people were real. True, they sat there laughing and watching the movie playing on the screen, but were more like part of the scenery than interactive characters. The theater was packed with these people all hanging out in the background like extras in another movie. Pale faces staring at the screen and nowhere else. The laughter they heard was like a sound recording in the audience's expressions shifted only slightly as they watched the action in front of them. It was as if the keepers had set up a movie set of their own and placed Sarah and him into it. He was getting all the information on these things from Sarah because he had no knowledge of movies and such. Growing up in the country in a land that was a little bit technologically behind the rest of the lands, he never really had the opportunity to go to a movie. Even when he was able to travel from world to world, being that it was for the purpose of fighting horrible creatures that were there to terrorize and kill the inhabitants, he never seemed to find the time to go looking for entertainment. Today was different though. Today, he had been to the movies roughly 50 times and all on dates with Sarah. Not that he was complaining. If he had his way, this day would go on forever. Ever since he and Sarah had acknowledged their feelings for another, there had not been time for them to enjoy just being together. Their parents had been thrilled to see them falling in love from their perches high above the worlds and wanted to give them time to just be together, a day that seemed to go on forever. Time passed very slowly in this place created by the original keepers. One day could seem like several months. It was their way of giving their children some of what they had seen others experience. The keepers had lived among many of Iam's creations for a time and had gotten to know them quite well, but had never actually been one of them. Keepers had been given human forms by Iam, bonded with his creations, and grown to love them, but they had to learn what and who they were from close observation. The human condition had not come naturally to them. The keepers had never been children or teenagers. Anything they may have learned about growing up as a person had been passed on to them by those they had watched through the years and the dead youngsters that passed through this place from time to time. They hated to see them that way. People should not die young, but when they did, they were a great source of popular culture for their time. It comforted the youngsters to talk with them, and it gave the ancient ones valuable insight into the world they no longer occupied. So, armed with the information given to them by the young and departed, they had sent Sarah and Thomas on about 3 months' worth of dates to all kinds of places like this. They had been to dinners they could not eat because they were dead, sporting events in which pale athletes had played all kinds of games from basketball to football with incredible skill, and long romantic walks in some of the most beautiful parks they had ever seen. They had talked for hours, even though they knew so much about each other through their soul connection. It was nice to communicate like this, laughing and forgetting that they carried the weight of the world on their shoulders. Their parents could not have given them a better gift than this.